one of the best growth hacks is to launch a content project essentially, which is if you are as early stage startup, you most likely you have some vision or the way you think about the world that you believe in, and you want to get those early customers who believe in that vision and build your initial customer base using that. So what I've done a lot of times is, okay, let's build a content project around this essentially, where we build either a guide or whatever is relevant for your company that you're building. Let's build a guide that really goes in depth into this, our vision essentially, and let's make it chapter by chapter. And instead of writing it ourselves, let's bring for every chapter, let's actually invite collaborators. So from different areas, people we want to associate ourselves with who also believe in this vision, who already have user and customer bases that we can tap into, or it could be ecosystem partners like other vendors that are relevant for us, etc. Let's bring all those people and collaboratively build this guide. And it's interesting what it does, which is basically that we will learn about the market. We will associate our brand with these other cool companies that we want to associate ourselves. And it does almost the positioning for us in a way. So when a new customer comes in and they see, okay, there's all this space of tools and influencers and our companies in the middle, they will immediately see that, okay, what we are doing essentially. And the good thing when you collaborate with other people is that also takes care of the distribution of the content. They are happy to also spread that in their own networks, and distribution almost happens by itself. So project like this, you learn so much also about when you're actually writing about this stuff. I'm looking for these kind of projects essentially where you can just build one thing and it will help you on so many different things. Other things, SEO, you will have every chapter targeting a specific keyword that is relevant for your business. You can use individual chapters as a kind of lead magnets for paid, etc. So it just does so much heavy lifting for the company in early stages that I feel like founders in early stage should be focused on that rather than just, okay, let's launch LinkedIn ads, which can also be a fine way, but try to find things that are really doing a lot of heavy lifting for you.
Can you share an example of a guide topic that you've done at a company in the past?
We did that at a bit later stage at Pitch, where it was really about this. Presentations are historically, they're very much done individually, and like collaboration was a very new topic for building presentations, or at least very clunky, right? So when you're doing presentations, you're sending them left and right. Collaboration wasn't built in with PowerPoint, for example. So education, like how can teams actually do this? Sales teams, for example, collaboratively build sales decks, distribute them, get the analytics of who's actually opening the presentations, etc., and using that analytics to then improve the presentations, for example. So we did the same playbook here, chapter by chapter, and basically just collaborating with relevant people and building follow-up campaigns with those people. Your content team can stay with that single project for 6 to 9 months and really be focused on great execution rather than switching tasks all the time. This chapter by chapter approach, it also lends itself to basically you do one chapter and you use the same playbook to release the follow-up chapters. It makes it easier for your team as well to just have this backlog of stuff that they can do and just get better at doing it.
Do you have a number, let's say, in mind for how many chapters it should have?
No, and this is another thing. So the way we are basically building this is almost collaboratively, right? Usually you as a company, like sometimes the founder is the authority on the specific topic that you're doing. But in many cases, there are people out there who know more about the topic, right? So the way we are basically building this is we're actually, instead of doing traditional outbound, where we are just asking people like, hey, this is our product, please buy it or become like a design partner, we actually just go and ask, hey, you're an expert in this field. We're building this new thing, this guide thing. We would love you to be an expert and just come and explain essentially like how you do this thing. And you would be astonished like what the response rate for this kind of messages is. So we basically bring in these people, we talk to them, we have an outline, we will share that with them, and they will give us feedback of, okay, that's not so interesting, you should definitely do this thing. And once you rinse and repeat that with enough people, you will actually arrive at the killer outline for what you actually need to do, because it's fully based on what the market actually wants to read.
And is the outline as simple as the chapter headings that you guys have in mind, or are you getting more in depth on each one? What does it actually look like if we open the Google Doc?
Yeah, it's not a Google Doc. It should be a landing page. What I found as well is that whatever you do, like you do ads, you do content, you do outbound, like you really need to, in order to break through the noise, like you need to amp up the quality. There's just so much noise out there.
You mean
So-
in terms of the actual product,
Yeah,
how
or just
you're going
like
to deliver
people
it?
getting inbound and asks and all
Yeah.
that stuff. So in order to break through that barrier, like you really need to over-index on quality, right? So what we actually do is basically we already build a landing page. We make it look real. We will have actually people already attached to individual chapters. And for the recipient, it's not just, okay, it's a spreadsheet of some like text, but when they actually see already, okay, there's a landing page, it seems like it's already going, it's almost already ready. There's all these like 5 other people that I find aspirational who are already committed to doing this thing. Again, like they will be so easy, it will be easy to convince them to jump in there essentially. So it's a kind of a way of like slightly faking it, just generating this like activation energy at the beginning where you just sell them on the vision of the thing. And
But I mean, when I say Google Doc, what I mean is that if we go even one step back to when at some point it might have been a Word doc or might have been written in your notebook or something. But at that point, at really going from 0 to these first 5 that you then need to have that sort of activation energy, as you call it. What does it look like at that point?
I think it's a very kind of company specific thing. So it's really, you need to understand your market and really what are you selling and like how best sell the vision, etc. But I think in general, like you should have don't over index on the vision. It should be always like super practical. Like vision has a place, but like they rarely buy the vision. They buy the kind of, how can this help me in my life really? So the chapters usually, they should be very practical in a way of helping solve problems, be very based on case studies from others and evidence from other companies, etc. So it's really actionable. Like you want to go really deep on that. Any original research that you can produce, for example, studies, etc., that kind of shows something that was previously hidden. These things are always quite powerful. And if you have a unique framework, for example, that in your space you can produce, I think those things are always great ways of displaying value, and you get people to click and read those things when you're providing something new and something of value, basically.
So at the beginning, you might have, for those first 5 chapters, which you're then going to use as this tool for getting the next level of contribution, you have some combination of maybe people that you have a relationship with, people that you think will be willing to help out or effectively guest writing a blog post by the sounds of it in a way. I don't know if you'd characterize it differently, but then you're blending that with sort of case examples that you have from the actual business application, and that's your foundation. Yeah,
exactly. And you should be very data driven on this. And the good thing is that it's not a thing you build once and you forget it, but it's a thing, once you build this, it is actually evergreen. You can keep on adding on this stuff. You add case studies, you embed them under the relevant chapters, and you can keep on adding stuff. You can prune things that are not necessarily working, etc. So it's really like, you could think about this as the mega lead magnet on the website, where somebody comes in, like this is where they find about your vision and can go deeper into the topics that are relevant for you.
You shared there how we get these first 0 to 5 contributions or pieces that you need in order to have the foundation to have something to go and reach out to people with.
Yeah.
But if we go then even one step farther back, if I'm understanding you correctly on how you put this guide together, or tell me if I'm missing something, you probably have some internal title of the guide, and then inside of that I'm going to go have those chapters. And then how do you think about finding that key sort of high level topic that then we're going to go run with? Because you're kind of, to a degree, then I don't know if you'd agree, but then you're stuck with it maybe.
Again, I think it's very company specific. Like it really depends, like what are you doing? Are you doing collaborative presentations, then you're early, the idea is new, you need to educate the market basically, and this is the first kind of iteration on that, right? So let's do the guide around like how do you collaboratively build presentations, how to save time by doing this, etc. Who are our villains? What are we against here? It's really, that can be the presentation space, but in any other kind of vertical, it could be a different story that you need to tell. It's telling the core story of your company essentially and finding the best way to convince kind of your users and customers to buy into that story essentially. So I don't think for the earliest initiation phases, some companies don't necessarily have a story to tell like that. But from my experience, if you're really out there, you're really early with your idea, etc., like it is usually the case, even in these kind of more established fields. Of if you're doing analytics, for example, there are niches within that world, which is okay, like user-based analytics, or just drill into that specific area essentially and just explain it in whatever way works for you. Basically, like why are we different and why you should buy from us instead of somebody else.
That makes sense. So you have, it could be, like you said, it could be a story or something maybe that through customer conversations people have an aha moment around or something like that? Is that how you figure out, oh, okay, this is maybe something then to go and worth educating on if there's not a ton of other content on it or that sort of thing?
Yeah, I guess earlier stage you are selling. Like everything you're doing is like you have an MVP that you built. It could be even a landing page, and you start talking to people and you try to understand their problems. What are you doing right now? Do you believe in also like this vision that we have, etc.? And it's really like you just have open-ended discussions with people, and I think that is the way of understanding like, okay, what does the target market basically care about? And based on that, that is how you start building a website as well. Like the value props come from those conversations. The same thing for content, really.
Okay, so now we've come up with our idea or the kind of theme for this, got the first 5. Now you build a landing page. Is that, when you say landing page, typically, and I know this is, you might say this is going to vary company to company, but I'm just curious how you'd actually implement this. Is it a landing page where you're doing download to get the thing, or are you usually doing it more like a blog post with multiple chapters? And is that what you mean by landing page?
I can give you a practical example. So I was part of building this WeForge competitor in Europe, which was a like educational program, like cohort-based programs for marketing and sales professionals. And we had exactly the same challenge of, okay, we're super new to this. We don't have anything that we've done in the past in terms of programs. How do we get people from Airbnb and other N26, like these large European or American companies, like their senior people, to come and build content for us? That is a real challenge, right? So the way we did that basically is for the part of like how do we get collaborators to actually build this content together with us. We basically just build like a mock-up on Figma, just make it look pretty, etc., and just screen grab that. It doesn't even need to be online necessarily, although with page builders these days like Framer, it's very easy to just get a Figma design and make that into a website. Right. There was no call to actions, etc. It was just, again, just presenting, okay, this is what we're building, coming soon, leave email here. So for the collaborators, that it looks real, that this is actually, it is happening. There's a date at that, it's 6 months ahead, like this thing is actually launching. So then they basically see that, okay, wow, I want to be part of that thing. I've been looking to get these insights off my chest, essentially. So that made selling really easy. Like we were able to get very high up people to collaborate on the program, and everybody's happy. It's just this kind of like, how do you create this? How do you make it seem real and look real and create this initial activation energy instead of just like cold calling somebody or sending an email and just, okay, we have this idea of here's a 5 bullet points. Like, it is so difficult to imagine how the end result will actually look like. And,
right.
But again, you don't need to have the content ready, like none of this stuff. You're still selling an idea, but just to a different audience, basically. So I'm a huge believer in faking things to a large extent. Like it is not a bad thing. It is still, you're still marketing the idea and selling the thing. And as long as you don't actually you're not lying about the thing, like it is.
It's coming.
I think it's a win all over.
So maybe it's never finished. But we're beyond that point we had talked about. You have it's published. There's multiple contributors online. It's out there. And you have this thing. It's ready. How do you go about then getting the commercial value out of it? Is it in the early stages? Is it more from giving the sales team a thing to use in outbound? Are you putting paid budget behind it? Is it an SEO play? Is it all the above? How are you actually turning something like this into sales, which is obviously the end goal?
It can be a lot of those things for sure. Like I think in our case at Flow, for example, like it will do a bunch of work for SEO. It's arguably one of the better like lead magnets you can use for when you're running your paid campaigns, for example. And also just for the average person who, like early stage companies, they're built on word of mouth to a large extent, even sales-led companies, etc. You will have people coming to your website, and that is the kind of secondary CTA. Like if they're not convinced about your product yet, that is the way for them to go deeper and read about stuff. I see a lot of like early stage websites where the content is just so shallow almost. Like you have the headlines and everything, and the clarity of copy usually isn't as clear, so you're left guessing. Okay, this idea, but like it's fuzzy, and like people have a very short consideration span. So you really need to hook them with your page, and then this is the thing that kind of allows them to go deeper and just like really get bought in with your vision, essentially.